welcome back to our show. It's day 2 of the Capital Markets Conference, and while everybody on in our audience knows not to take me seriously because I'm the imbibing 6-year-old, today we have somebody quite important, and I'm actually going to pay particular attention and be careful with what I say because anymore is my regulator, the CEO of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Thank you so much for coming through. Perhaps you can talk to our audience a little bit about the idea of this capital markets conference, because you're one of the promoters. You brought us all together, I think, in collaboration with Zimbabwe Independent and Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Perhaps walk us through the thinking behind this conference and what you hope to achieve, and whether you think we got there.
Thanks, Rufaro, and it's quite a pleasure and honor to be on the platform. Yeah, so it's something that we've been aspiring, I think, as a commission for a while. I think the initial plan was for us to actually do it on our own. That was the plan when we strategized about it. So one of the items that we had observed as a commission is that gap between the market and, I would say, our policymakers. We've always felt that we have not had a platform where policymakers, regulators, and the market was in one place to convey. We have faced several issues since, I think, 2022, and it has always been a back and forth between ourselves and the market. But we felt there's need for a platform, where the market can ventilate and the policymakers can respond. So that was the initial plan. And we had planned to do this on our own, but then I think Justin and Alpha Media, I think we're also trying to do something. And they invited us to say, we know you were thinking of this plan and we're also thinking of this. Why don't we combine forces and see perhaps how it happens? So given that for us it was going to be the first time, obviously, we felt partnerships would really help. So we joined forces with the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange and Alpha Media, and here we are. We think the conference has been successful for the first time that we're actually doing it. So like I was saying, for us it was more of trying to create a platform where market could interface with the policymakers. There's always been this feeling that the commission is the policymaker. To a certain extent, yes. But we are in agents of the Ministry of Finance. Basic mandate is to enforce regulation. We do contribute to policy formulation, but we also have got principles, that we report to. Our mandate in terms of the Act is actually to just propose, not necessarily to actually. So it's then up to our principals whether they accept
to actually put together the legislation,
yes,
and amendments to statutory instruments, yes, and then gazette them.
Yes, but that's the regulation. There's the policy side, and that's largely a ministry function, I would say, obviously in consultation with the regulator of the market. So, but as we joined forces with the other participants, obviously the mandate became broader. It was no longer just the platform, to bridge a gap between the industry and the policymaker. So we then looked at what are the issues that are also affecting the market. Recent issues, ESG became one of them. So you'd be aware the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, the VFX, published something beginning of the year to say it's now mandatory for the issuers to report on their sustainability. So that became a key pillar for the conference. We also looked at fintech. VFX recently launched CFDs, and it's part and parcel of what I would say. It's part and parcel of new products that are not relatively known. We obviously have got the bigger portion of the virtual assets that are not yet part and parcel of the market. But we felt fintech is probably something that can be exciting and something that we can also not ignore. It's quite disruptive. I think we have been losing market share to a certain extent to these online platforms. So why don't we also add it to the conference? So I would say it became, the mandate became a platform for us to have a conversation with the policymakers, a platform for us to discuss recent developments in the market, ESG, fintech. And I think from the discussions over the past 2 days, I would say we have largely achieved what we set out to achieve, because the discussions were quite robust. I think the representative from the ministry were there, which was, I think, for us a plus, because that's what we really wanted to do. Did you discuss ESG? I think we did, and contributions, I think, from the panelists, even I think the virtual platforms, I mean the virtual presenters were quite spot on. Fintech, yeah. I think we also made some robust contributions and discussions in that area. So from where we sit, definitely the areas to improve. I think the program was a bit packed. That's what we found out. I think we put in too many things in one go. Probably for a market that has been, not meeting for a while. Yeah. We had so many things to exhaust, to cover. So I think it became too packed. But I think we learn as we move forward. We obviously, I think, try to create more time for us to discuss more on the areas that we would then want to focus on in subsequent. But where we are, I think we're quite happy with the progress.
Yeah. And as you can see from the way we're dressed, it's quite nippy out here in Nyanga. Did you guys deliberately choose the coldest time of the year? Did you think that maybe, the frosty relations would warm up? In the cold?
Some place to a hug.
So like I was saying, when it was still a sex in baby, we had actually planned to do it first quarter.
Okay.
But obviously, we needed the key representation of the Minister of Finance. And unfortunately, first quarter it was a bit, I think, heavy. We had COM24 happening. We had, I think, investment trips that went to China, went to Joburg. UNECA, that's the COM24 as well. Yeah. So it couldn't happen in the first quarter, which probably was the warmer season. Much warmer season. So we had to push it to second quarter, and then again we had to check the days where our principals were going to be available. So June became the month that we felt perhaps it's a bit open. Venue, unfortunately, we could have gone for Vic Falls, but I think there was also a number of activities that were taking place in Vic Falls during the same time. I think recently we had the Chamber of Mines. Previously, I think the last 2 weeks there was ZIPF. So we couldn't get accommodation, or couldn't get facilities in Vic Falls. And Trotbeck, we felt it's closer, people can drive. We're also looking at the cost.
So you can't really fly.
Yeah. You can't fly. So I would say it was what was available at the time that we could congregate.
Fantastic.
Yeah. But it's not a bad place.
Look,
it's lovely. Thank you. It's a brilliant place. Guys, come to Nyanga, please. Can you come to Nyanga?
I think I said it earlier, most conferences are just talk shows and nothing really happens, and people don't take away anything meaningful from it. But I suspect many of the delegates, will have a lot to take away from this in terms of insights, in terms of areas for them to work on, and bridges to build in terms of some of the people that they would have interacted with for the first time.
If I may, the issue is that it's like all players know the things that are there, but to get everyone in one room to discuss them all at once. Otherwise, you have these silos of that's our problem, that's our problem, that's our problem. But what's anymore done in the SEC Zim and also Victoria Stock Exchange and Zimbabwe Independent is all in the room. Now we all know the issues.
Yeah.
Now we all know what they are, and now it's down to SecZim, the ZSC, and of course the new CMA, Capital Markets Association, to go forward now now we know the issues. Now we know what we all want to achieve. Let's try and get that done. And I think that's now back in SecZim and Victoria and the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange's hands.
Yeah, and congratulations to you. I think that you ran a really tight ship. Sometimes when you're an MC at these conferences, getting things to happen on time and in order, it's like George loves to say, herding cats.
It's true. Yeah, and then they run off, and then you have to chase them again.
Difficult.
Yeah. I know, but I must be honest. I think most of the conferences that I do manage to MC or direct ceremonies. They were only 15 minutes late. That's not bad Zimbabwean time, is it?
Especially normally
I'm used to half an hour, 45 minutes. 50 minutes I can deal with. So it was good fun.
And you were able to claw back time during the day.
But more importantly, the participation of the delegates was incredible. People were vested in this conference. Why? Because they knew that this conference could determine their capital markets going forward.
Yeah.
And I think when you have that type
Absolutely.
of
So
vested
livelihoods,
interest,
we've got skin in the game.
you got skin in the game. And once you have
Yeah.
skin in the game, you listen, you participate. And now I hope that as stakeholders, you're also pushing the regulators, you're pushing the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, you're pushing the CMA to now say, guys, now we know what we want, now we know what our issues are, how can we strategize to go forward to achieve them?
Definitely.
No, fantastic. And so maybe we can revisit some of the more interesting conversations that we had here
Yeah.
for the benefit of our audience
Yeah.
in terms of, because I think one of the things that impressed me for sure is that we had a very senior government official in the Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance who attended yesterday and some of today. And we had a very robust and candid conversation about the things that we all care about that affect our market. For example, the ZIG,
Yes.
the IMTT tax at 2%, and people brought up policy inconsistency, and we had an interaction where I think the capital market players expressed themselves, and the minister got the benefit of our perspective. And we also benefited from his perspective because he presented, how things work in government, how that's different from the way we do things in the private sector, and perhaps where the opportunities lay in terms of us collaborating and working better together going forward.
Rufaro, I think it's easy to say we're a listening government and take it as if it's just a slogan or words, but I think what Honorable David Mnangagwa proved, the Deputy Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, he proved that, the government is listening, because he listened, he contributed, he accepted what we said, and he told us, no, that we can't do that, yes, we can do this, yes, we'll look at this, no, we can't look at this. It was an open discussion, and I think one of the things that you actually mentioned right at the beginning is the trust deficit. And I think it's that type of engagement that restores trust anymore.
Definitely. I think these are the required, interventions. I think there's an old adage that says, a problem shared is half solved. So it's good to ventilate. And for the policymakers to hear what the sentiments is like. And I think you try to actually steer to say, you are the one who actually probed to say, let's have your perception of what you think the market is like, and perhaps how government perceives it. And I think we had a very robust and candid exchange on that, which is quite good, because sometimes perhaps it's a matter of perception, which can be corrected quite easily.
Exactly.
But I think beyond that, I think it's also the call to say, the door is open, and let's continuously engage. We might not win on everything, but for me, that was a major breakthrough.
So I'd love to ask this question. I ask it to everybody who is doing work in government that started their career in the private sector, and this is true for you as well.
Yeah, it is.
We were dealers together, imagine.
Right?
Yeah. We were there in the trenches, working hard
You're
in
an
the day.
investment banker by training.
We've been.
You worked for a long time in the private sector before you joined government, and so perhaps for the benefit of our audience and people out there in the private sector who look at government through this lens, right? You've actually you actually work for a government agency, and you actually interact with senior government officials on an ongoing basis. What do you think the perception is in the private sector, which you understand quite well? What do you think we're getting wrong when we analyze government and how they put together policy action?
Okay. Yeah, so I think the Deputy Minister partly addressed that. So what I'm in my second year now. It's relatively short period, perhaps, compared to my previous life in the private sector. But the sense that you get is when you're in government, you look beyond one sector. You have got that national perspective always in the back of your mind. And that sort of provides your framework when you're looking at issues. So I want to put this into context. The issues that we've been facing as a market, vesting period, capital gains taxes, and we've felt very strongly about it. But when you exchange, when you're sitting in there and you're looking at the big picture and you're saying, okay, So government is concerned about the exchange rate and what it is doing, to value. And the currency obviously is an issue of pride for any nation. And they're looking at that and saying, okay, how do we deal with this animal? So it's like a war. You look at an enemy and they will be bound to be collateral damage. So I would say, and this is probably part of the aspects that we have been suffering, but I would say the focus was not really to punish the market. I think this is from in my previous life. The feeling was, no, government is out to punish us. But no, government was actually trying to correct a bigger issue.
I mean, anymore, the fact is this, is that government has to look after 15 million people. And if only 2,000 of us can go and change policy for us, it can't work. The government has to put in policies that actually affect all of us. And sometimes we may not like them, sometimes it may suit us. But at the end of the day, what we have to care about is what's good for our nation. I think that's the bottom line, isn't it? And sometimes we have to take the bad with the good just to achieve that. But also knowing that they're going to change those things when things stabilize. And I think that's the key.
Definitely. And I think it then brings out this aspect to say dialogue then becomes important. Continuous engagement becomes important. Because sometimes as private sector, we're just seeing the effects, but perhaps we're not getting the context. And the dialogue becomes important to actually break down to say, okay, this is what happened, but perhaps the why. Is probably what we're not getting, but it becomes important to actually get the why of whatever will happen.
Right. So, in fact, if I can just jump in, if you don't mind, before one of the major, I suppose, I can call it a bright spot in the conference. Of course, there were lots of bright spots, but the one was Willem Manemanzi from the Reserve Bank. He's Deputy Director of Financial Markets there, and he was supposed to give a 15-minute presentation. I think he was stuck for an hour.
Because we had many questions.
We had many questions, and I think what's important for us is to maybe now, and I know it's kind of, in a way, it's part of the capital markets, but as well at the same time, it also affects all Zimbabweans. Well, let's talk about the ZiG. Okay, now, I like to be really basic and simple about the ZiG. Let's look at it in two parts. Let's first look at it from the regulatory perspective. Okay, think about what was happening. December, the exchange rate crashes. It goes from 9,000 to 30,000. January, there's still pressure on the exchange rate. Inflation is spiking, both US dollar, local inflation. Prices are going up. Citizens are not able to afford basic commodities. That is the situation that we had at the end of 2023 going into 2024, right? It's a problem. Because when you have that, when people can't afford to feed their families, you have issues. Not just at home, but you also have issues in government. Because government does not want to see their citizens suffering about things that they can't control, which is the exchange rate. And I've said it many times. The exchange rate was and is still our biggest policy issue in Zimbabwe. Forget about anything else. If we can figure the exchange rate. So there you're sitting with government. Government is sitting there seeing all of this instability in the financial markets caused by the exchange rate, okay? So what do? They think to themselves, right, we need to stabilize the economy. We need an exchange rate that's stable. Sure, look, exchange rate depreciate. They go up and down all the time. That's not an issue. The issue is that you don't go from 9,000 to 30,000, 40,000 in the space of a week, okay, 2 weeks. It doesn't make sense, okay? So government had to say to themselves, okay, and Treasury had to say, we need to stabilize the economy. So what is our trick? So the trick to do is to introduce the ZiG. Right now, a lot of people can say, well, when government says it's gold-backed and foreign currency-backed, no, it doesn't really affect them as individuals. Why? Because we're interested in making sure prices are stable. We want to make sure that our ZiG has value. Okay, I don't want to get my ZiG and immediately go and convert it to US dollars. I want it to sit in my bank account and use it in 3 months' time, and it's still worth the same. I can still buy a loaf of bread in 3 months' time at the same price as I can today. That is what stability is. And that's what we want as Zimbabweans. No one can argue with that.
Yeah.
So the only issue, of course, is simply what happens. Of course, two things, for me, major things. One, there's no ZiG currency around. You can't find notes, coins anywhere, okay? And if you do, it's coins that don't really mean anything because no one's going to buy one ZiG, okay, in terms of a coin of one ZiG. I'm putting them in my drawer. That's the first issue. There isn't enough notes and coins out there. Yet the central bank is saying that they're giving notes and coins to the bank, right, the banks, and the numbers were very clear. They said they're only giving, of all the ZiG we gave to the banks, only 30% was released into the market. So where's the other 70%? Okay, that is the question the banks need to answer, right?
I would agree. For me, I've attempted, I haven't gone into the banking halls, I've attempted to take ZiG from the ATM, and every time I go to the ATM, I'm told it's USD only. I'm not sure if it's an issue of whether the ATM is compatible with the ZIG. I'm not really sure.
Should be, shouldn't it?
Yeah, but I would agree that the circulation of the physical notes and coins is definitely...
Now, why is that an
limited.
issue? Because we need notes and coins to pay for combi, to get to work, to pay for combis. We need notes and coins to do this and so forth. But the second issue, which is even more critical, is that a lot of citizens are being paid a lot of their salary in ZIG. Yet they have costs in fuel they need to pay in US dollars. Rentals need to pay in US dollars. Maybe they have to pay their school fees or portion of it in US dollars. Okay, these are facts. Okay, but the problem now is that they're labeled as illegal to go into the market to buy US dollars with their ZIG, right? So there you have two issues. You have what the central bank and government and the treasury want, which is to stabilize the economy, stabilize the exchange rate, stabilize it for prices so that citizens have a better standard of living. It's as simple as this. On the other side, of course, we have citizens that really, that's all they want. They don't really care, to be frank, about whether it's gold backed or whether there's foreign currency behind it. That's for us guys sitting in this capital markets conference to talk about. You know, it's a big holistic picture which makes sense from a macroeconomic view economist. But if you're my grandmother in Kumusha and Mrewa, okay, do you think that you care whether it's gold backed? You don't. What you want is to know that when I use my ZIG, when I go to a shop, the prices are the same. When I use my ZIG, I can use it anywhere I want, okay? And therein lies what some of the issues. Because one of the major issues, of course, about ZIG is the fact that 80% of the economy works in US dollars. Yep. So the way is to try and, how do you formalize the informal with ZIG? You get the point? We need them to start using ZIG. So as I said, there's two issues here. There's the why was ZIG introduced? Very clear reasons why, and I think no one can dispute them. It was there to stabilize the economy, stabilize prices. In fact, ZIG was introduced to help people. Simple as that, help citizens. But from a citizen's perspective, to be frank, not a lot has changed, okay? Not really a lot has changed. But what has changed is there has been stability since the 5th of April.
Yeah, there has been. I was about to say, I think one of the issues behind currencies is the issue of confidence, which I think even the monetary authorities would agree that, you know, with the ZWL, I think a lot of confidence had been eroded. And obviously something that takes time to come back. So I would understand why the market, and I mean some sectors are actually obviously resisting the new currency. It's because that takes time. That takes time. And probably we have to be a bit more patient with the monetary authorities and even our citizens to a certain extent. And I think it's the continuous or the continued stability that we have to safeguard, make sure that we continue to provide that.
Anyway, ZIG is the way to go. We need to none of us dispute this.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, ZIG is the way to go.
Look, I hear both of you. I think that, you know, but fundamentally, the success of any currency is determined by the market.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I think that this is where, you know, our voices as people in the business community and private sector should be heard, because I think part of the reason that only 30% of the ZIGs have been issued out is because there isn't not much demand for the ZIG out there, because as you pointed out, 85% of our economy transacts in US dollars.
Right.
So the local currency is actually a small minority of day-to-day transactions in the everyday lives of people. And for sure, its market share can grow from 10-15% to 50% to 100% by the target date, I think 2030. But that's a function of persuasion, of engendering faith and confidence. And it's a long, hard journey. And I think, so the jury's out.
It is, but I think, you know, let's talk about confidence. Confidence is it's a virtual thing, isn't it? You can't say this and this and that. It's about, do I believe? Do I actually believe in confidence? And I think the one way the central bank is committed, and I think that the media and especially is going to hold them to account, is that they said that they will, one, not carry out any quasi-fiscal operations. Two, they'll stay within the law in terms of borrowing to government, which is important for money supply growth. They're going to control the money supply growth. They're going to keep hawkish monetary policy. Okay, remember it sounds. Remember, this doesn't to a normal citizen. This is like, what are you talking about?
It's academic.
It's academic. But what it translates to for citizens is stable prices, stable exchange rate, the ability to start transacting normally, not to immediately get your money. I did a survey. Before ZIG, in Zim dollars, it was 6 hours. If you got paid Zimbabwe dollars, within 6 hours you had spent it. Now think about that. You get Zim dollars in your account. Within 6 hours, you've spent it. Okay, now that's insane.
Yeah,
Whereas meanwhile, you should keep it for whatever you want. You should keep it for 6 months, 5 years. Who cares? Because the value.
It's supposed
if
to
you
be a
get
store
pounds,
value.
if you get pounds in your account, you're not going to sell it in 6 months, are you? 6 hours. You're going to keep it, right?
Yeah. I wanted to introduce a slightly different theory. This, and I want to get your opinion on Faro. So there's also behavioral issues there. So we are assuming rationality as well. You say, you know, demand and supply should provide feedback mechanism to government. But let's throw in this issue of behavioral finance, behavioral issues that your normal market forces may not deal with. So there is resistance, and I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate for government to say, how do we expect government to react to that? Is it rational? Is it irrational?
So I'll tell you what I would do. I'll tell you what I would do.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to, because I think it's I think the expression is a quick win.
Okay.
Right. And I don't think this opportunity has been completely missed. I think it's still there.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things about ZIG is that it's not a fiat currency, it's a structured currency.
Yeah.
Which means that for every unit of ZIG that's in issue,
There's
there is a US dollar
backing it somewhere.
Or
backing
gold.
it, or gold.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be interchangeable. The Reserve Bank has done its numbers, and they believe that a reasonable rate is 13.4, 13.5.
Yeah.
Right? And if I was them and I wanted to engender faith and confidence in the ZIG in an aggressive way, I would set up a trading desk at the Reserve Bank.
Okay.
And I wouldn't actually have a problem with people on the power market trading at 16, 17, 18. You know, I would actually say to the banks, if to the extent that there are people who are willing to pay more than what we think is a reasonable rate, people want to pay 16, they want to pay 18, that's okay. I've got the US dollars backing each unit of ZIG. Give them at that rate, at 16, at 18, at 19. Because eventually, they're going to suck those ZIGs out of the market.
Yeah.
And they'll be the only holder. And those same market participants who would have gotten rid of their ZIG and paid these premiums, they're going to wake up one day and they need to pay their QPD, they need to pay their other statutory obligations in ZIG, but they don't have any ZIG. And if I was running that trading desk, I'll say, right guys,
come back.
if you want ZIG, I've got them, but I'm not selling US dollars at 16 or 19. I'm selling at 13.5.
Yeah. Look, I'm
selling at 12.
I don't disagree with you, but okay, we can debate that, and I know that we can talk about that for a whole show about why I think there's issues with it.
And when people make losses like that, they change their behavior.
I think we need to start with the fundamental. The fundamental is that when, for example, the Reserve Bank says this is what they're going to do, they must do it. Okay, and I think in going back over the last 15, 20 years, they haven't. So it's that deficit, it's that confidence deficit. And it's important, not just for the Reserve Bank, but also for Treasury and also for government, in the sense that if we say something, right, we're going to explain what we're doing and it's going to happen. That builds confidence. And I think the new governor was very clear on that. And unfortunately, he said it public, which means we're going to hold him to account. He said we're not going to do quasi-fiscal, we're not going to print money, we're not going to give the government unlawful borrowings, etc., okay? Which sounds very economic, but in essence it does impact citizens. What we need policies that are consistent. We need a Reserve Bank which we have to start trusting, and in fact, let's be frank, we don't, okay? We need the messaging to be clear.
Why don't you trust them?
well, I tell you, no, not me. I'm talking about people.
There's a track record. There's a track record, unfortunately, of things not working the way.
Is that not angering bias?
But more importantly, maybe, yes, you're right. And that's the problem. Memory bias. Memory bias.
It's a memory bias.
Exactly.
But if you wear your hat as an investment banker, right? You know, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
Yeah. But let me just finish my thought, because this is very important. I think it's very critical for economic players like Treasury and the Reserve Bank to actually say publicly that, you know what, yeah, we got that wrong, we should do this better. Why? Because, you know, Zimbabweans we're good at one thing. We like the truth. Have you noticed that? We actually do. As much as people can say this, we like people to tell us, listen, you know what, I did this, and you know, I'm sorry, it didn't work, but that's okay, and this is why it didn't work. But the problem is that when people don't explain that, when people don't explain what's happening, like now as we're talking, you know, when you say there's no Zig around, people are complaining we can't get notes and coins, no one is saying why. Only today did we hear that 30%,
it's not being distributed.
70% is not being distributed, okay? But this is at a conference of all the top players, right?
Yeah.
And you talked earlier about how Anymore and myself through the media and even yourself have access to high senior government officials, right? Now, we're special. Why? Because 15 million people cannot have access to those individuals, okay? So in a way, what I do in media, and I suppose everyone else does, and you guys, is we have to represent the people who don't have voices getting into those offices. And we have to tell those policymakers exactly what's happening on the street, what people are saying, what they think, because the only way they'll find out is if we tell them. Otherwise, they don't know. Because tell me, do you know I don't know what's happening in Muzarabani. I don't know what's happening in Chimanimani, right? But people do. Yeah. And it's getting that message through. And this is what we need to do. This is why I talk about a listening government. If we need to do that trust deficit. And it's so critical. It's an ethereal thing. It's something that you can't say, that's what's going to make me trust you. Huh? I always say sometimes that if, and I don't mean this, but if your wife cheats on you, how do you trust her again? You get it? It's an ethereal thing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Right? You understand? It's not something you can put your finger on and say. But that's how, and that is in essence what we are. We're in this relationship with government where we need to trust them. But we need to build that trust up. And frankly, I say this because, let me put it bluntly. If we didn't have ZIG, what would we have? We'd have a declining currency. We'd be at 70, 100,000 to 1 by now. Yeah. We'd be at 200,000 to 1. We would have, our money would be worth nothing.
Would have just
the prices would have crashed. Yeah. Exactly. You see my point? Prices would have crashed. We wouldn't be able to afford anything. So then what? So what do you expect to do then? Now they've come up with ZIG, and what's happening? People are going, oh, we don't like ZIG. We don't want to do this. And then what do you want then? What do you actually want if you don't want ZIG?
Yeah.
Tell me.
So for me, one of my biggest takeaways, and you know, I've always admonished the business community for not speaking out. You know, but what I saw over the last couple of days from the private sector is people did speak out.
Yes,
they did.
People did express you know, their perspective, and on the other side, frankly, you know, my expectation was that the government officials would be extremely defensive.
Oh, it was completely opposite.
But they were actually very accommodating.
In fact, the 2 days showed how confidence can be built up. The 2 days showed confidence building.
And I think that, you know, so my biggest takeaway from this, and it's a credit to you and your team, you know, ZSC and the
Zimbabwe Independent, of course.
Independent for putting this together and getting the guys in the room from both the private sector and the government. It's very clear in my mind that if we continue with this level of engagement, we might be able to steer the economy in a better direction.
You know, there's no might.
Yeah.
You know. I say to people, I go, where are you going? We live here. We're not going anywhere. So it's literally down to 50 million of us to make this work.
No,
all right? Because if it doesn't work, where are we going? I mean, what are we going to do?
I think we have to make it work.
We have to make it work. And the trick is for all of us to get together behind it, talk to government. We need, not just us, government, all the players, everybody. We need to get behind it and say, okay, that may not work, let's fix it. That may not work, let's fix it. But not to say, oh, this is ZIG is rubbish, oh, they've just taken off zeros off it like they did before, nothing has changed, yada, yada. From an individual perspective, that's true. You see the point? For me sitting there, getting paid ZIG and not knowing all this stuff, it's completely true. What's changed? All that's changed is I've gone from Zim dollar to ZIG. Zeros have gone off, right? Yeah. But however, prices have stabilized. The exchange rate is stabilized. You get it? There's no law, there's this huge depreciation, okay, right? That's the start. Now we need to build on that, and we need to build trust, we need to build confidence, we need to build things in citizens to say, you know what, I'm okay with this currency, I'm okay with the ZIG, I'm happy to hold it. And we're going to get there, I truly do. And we're going to get there through shows like yours, shows like this, whereby it isn't about government talking, it's about people in the market who are talking honestly and truthfully, okay? And that is what I'm calling for as well from the central bank, from government, to say, guys, if there's issues, if your communication isn't good, talk to us. Because you know what? Zimbabweans do one thing. We listen and we understand. Just as much as the president says his government does, we do the same thing.
If it had left that out when we asked me about government, it's another assumption I think that we noted private sectors. We always assume the government is full of people that don't know. Believe me, it's full of people that actually know.
Actually, no. And they know probably sometimes more than us. Anyway, more than us.
Yeah.
But I mean, apart from that, I mean, the ZIG was obviously critical. But, the issue, and in fact, any more can come in on this. The issue, and we spoke about this yesterday, is that why? I mean, we're sitting here talking about capital markets. And, of course, a lot of citizens out will be like, what's capital markets? Remember, the SecZim has done a survey. 2% of the population doesn't know. In fact, only 2% knows about the capital markets. In fact, their real survey says 0.0036. It's so small that no one knows. Okay, which is why they're launching. And anyway, I want to talk to you about that at #MySchool. Okay. But the point is that why are we talking about the capital markets? Guys sitting at home somewhere, wherever they are, thinking, what's the capital markets? Why does it matter to me? It matters. Why? Because it's the market, in essence, where money is raised for development. Money is raised to do projects, to do things, to put infrastructure in for companies, to make our lives better. That is what the capital market is about, very simply. All the instruments and what we're talking about is more complicated. But in essence, that is what citizens need to look at in the capital market. They need to understand why is it important. But more importantly, as you know this, they need to, if they can participate. And they don't know this. They can buy stock shares, REITs. They can buy ETFs and so forth. They can. And I think we need to educate them. And I think that's one of your mandates. Educate the population.
It is, Andy. It is definitely one of our mandates. And all these things that we're talking about the currency as well, it can't be in isolation, because if you look at the total economy as well, if the capital market is not functioning, somewhere you might find that it might have a direct impact on the current stability. But yes, definitely we have been pushing on investor education and financial literacy, especially for capital markets, because we feel it's an area where we are lagging behind quite significantly. I mean, if you compare it with other financial services, insurance, perhaps because some of it is mandatory, we all have got third-party insurance for motor vehicles, so to a certain extent we have got exposure.
Pensions
Banking,
is a problem,
I
of
think
course.
You can't
Pensions is an issue, though.
Without a banking
but
account.
Pensions is a discussion for a whole program, by the way. Let's not talk pensions.
Yeah, there are issues there, but at least for capital markets, the challenge has always been, it's at the periphery of your spending pattern. You first of all, perhaps clothe yourself, feed yourself, make sure you've got a roof over your head, and then after that, you're looking, okay, perhaps I have to insure my car, my house, and so forth. It's only the excess that then. Do I put it as an investment? And that has always been the case.
Agreed.
But awareness is a major issue, and we're really grappling to say how do we make it big bang, because we're making efforts, but the traction for me is not satisfactory.
I want to talk about
we're not hitting.
We're not hitting it, but I want to talk about another issue which I think was critical, and I think. For one, and I'm a journalist. One of the first times I really sat down and talk about Mutapa, okay? Because Mutapa, to a lot of people, is like this whole much of SOEs dumped into something. What's happening? What are the stories about it? And I think the conference, we had a good presentation from the deputy CIO of Mutapa, who was explaining exactly what it is, what they want to achieve, what they want to do, and I kind of wish in a way that was being told to people out there. Because remember, Mutapa is theirs. It doesn't belong to some ethereal someone. It belongs to us as Zimbabwean citizens. It's our sovereign wealth fund. So it's really important that we understand what's happening in there. Okay, and they did that. And I really like that. And it also will deepen our capital markets, because some SOEs may list, some may whatever, some may be sold. I don't know what the plans are. But the point is that it's that transparency that engenders confidence. When people hide things, you wonder, what are they hiding? What are they doing behind the scenes? But when people talk openly and say, this is what we're doing, you may not like it, but this is the story and this is why we're doing it, suddenly confidence is built. And I tell you now, if we can eliminate the confidence deficit in this country, I tell you, I think 60% of our job is done.
I agree with you. In fact, I wanted to go back to the example that you used, Andy, to say if your partner cheats, whatever they do, if they're late, coming
you'll always believe they're cheating.
Even if it might not be correct.
Yes.
I think it's the same thing that with Mutapa as well, say, why is it that? But if you look at, countries like China, UAE, sovereign wealth funds.
The normal
things.
Yeah.
Normal things. In fact, I think it was just a matter of just moving assets from one end to the other.
And funnily
Because
enough,
the ultimate beneficiary is the same. It doesn't change.
and if you think about it, it was really because when you have state-owned enterprises spread across all ministries in government, to suddenly
it had its difficulties.
To make it work is impossible, right? Yeah. So putting them into one place, sure, there's a lot of work. I mean, I wouldn't. I tell you what, if I was working at that company, I'd probably not be sleeping because you'd work all day and all night. But the point is this: is that at least it's one place now where these SOEs are in a house where they're looked at professionally, things are changed professionally. Okay, unlike sitting in ministries where it can be about power. It can be, I control this, that gives me my ministry power.
Yeah.
Government's role is to facilitate the citizens' business. That's what their role is.
Yeah.
Their role is to put in place the structures and policies that make our lives easier. Government's role is not to run business. Government's role is not to get involved and be the major player in certain sectors. That's not their role. So what this has done is moved government to what they should be and moved what they shouldn't be doing to a place whereby let's look at them. And if we have to close that one, we close it. If we have to sell that one, we sell it. If we want to keep this one, we keep it. That is what Mutapa has to do. And it's a big job. But you know what? Who can argue with it? Let's be honest.
No, it's a brilliant idea. Like the structure. It's a brilliant idea. And we believe me, for the capital markets, actually,
it's perfect.
We want it to work.
Yes, we want it to work.
We want it to work
because suddenly the markets will be reinvigorated.
Definitely. It's a good source of listings for us.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think, like someone said, if they don't list.
I mean, think about some of the companies, the SOEs in Mutapa. I mean, you know what? Even I would buy probably some of them if they're structured properly, because some of them are profit making. Some of them are good companies. Possibly they may have had bad management, whatever the story is. I don't know. But the fact is this: is that you know what? Some of these are not bad companies.
No.
But the problem is that because they're so used to getting money from the fiscus, that in essence there's no incentive, right? Yeah. And we need to change that mindset.
Yeah. It might not be many actually. And I think, you're right. The turnaround is necessary because SOEs everywhere else, I think, play a very critical role in terms of contributing to the fiscus and even to the capital markets. I mean, if you look at the railways in America, most of them are privately owned, and they're very efficient. And for us, that's what we need. Like I was saying, we can't divorce the currency issues because it's got a lot of issues. Efficiency everywhere, efficiency, in the transport sector.
The currency is the major policy issue that Zimbabwe has to deal with in 2024. I've said that, I'll keep saying it, and you know what? We did it, and we're still complaining. So what do we want? And this is it's a question for you. What do we want? Because you know what? Maybe you don't agree with the ZIG, maybe you don't agree with the policies, but what do you want? And if you have a better solution, tell us.
So I want the ZIG to succeed. Yeah. I think that we're all going to be better off if
100%.
If we reverse this trend where we're dollarizing, where most of the economy is becoming informal, because the three of us are players in the
formal sector.
Yeah. So if the formal sector becomes smaller and poorer, it means our businesses and the things that we get up and do every morning are going to generate less income for us, and we're going to be poorer, frankly.
That's
right?
correct.
Basically.
That's
so we're all for the formal sector doing well. We're all for the success of the ZIG, for more transactions to come back onto our capital markets. I think you and I are acutely aware that where we are today compared to 5 years ago in terms of the daily volumes that we see on our stock market, it's we're doing less than 20%.
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's
I agree.
Of the volume of trades that kept us busy. So we're not in a great place, and we really need to turn things around. And so I'm a huge proponent for the success of the local currency. I think that where perhaps we differ slightly is that we can't just speak to. We can't decree success.
No.
For ZIG, we can't decree faith and confidence. This is something that was lost over 20 years. It's not going to be regained overnight.
No, of course
not. It's
process.
It's going to be a difficult slog. I think there's some quick wins here and there that we can take advantage of to accelerate the process. But it's going to be a hard slog.
You see, I mean, let's think about it. Think about it as a citizen. Okay, right. I'm sitting at home with my wife, my kids. I'm in Chitungwiza or I'm in Mokokoba, wherever I am. And what do I want? Okay, I want to be able to buy food for my children. I want to be able to afford them. I want to send them to decent schools, right? I want to be able to go to work and work hard and get paid a good wage for working hard, yeah? I want to look after my family and create a life for my family. That's what I want, okay, right? Now, the question is this. Is that not what we should be? We should be looking at completely as government, as treasury, as any stakeholders, is to say, what mechanisms, what instruments are we putting in place that makes our citizens' lives better? Remember, upper middle income economy by 2030 means that, exactly that. It means that they need to make our lives better, right? So what do we need to do, okay? And what we don't need to do is sit at home moaning and bitching and complaining and that. We don't need that. That's not going to work. We need solutions, and then when they do come out, what we need to do is say, okay, we need to criticize them because we see criticism in it, but not to say this is bad, this shouldn't work. No, and I think that's the message that must go out, and there must be a very clear message, yeah? That at the end of the day, you know what? If you have better ideas, tell us. Here we are, right? You can phone Andy and tell me what my ideas are. But you know something? If you don't, yeah, okay, let's make this work, okay? And you know, and I said earlier, right? Tell me, where are you going? Where am I going? Am I going to move to? I'm not moving anywhere. I'm not going. This is my home. It's the most beautiful country in the world. Where am I going? Why would I leave this country? Why would I leave Nyanga, which is beautiful?
I want to go back a bit, Rufaro, on something that you have just raised in terms of the informal sector. I think from the conference, I think it's one of the areas that we also challenged on to say, you know what, the money has moved.
Yeah. To National Mattress Bank.
The money has moved.
National Mattress Bank, Pillow Bank.
In as much as I think us in the formal sector wants to continue focusing on that, I think it's also up to us.
We have to go to where the money is.
We have to go where the money is. 100%. We have to go where the money is. And this is where innovation becomes important, because I'm looking at economies like, you know, even the UK. SMEs are everywhere. India, America, UK. They've got a large portion of the SMEs. But it's the way they've managed to network them so that they also contribute.
Yes.
You know,
and then informal as well. A lot of the economy is informal in India.
So I would say, I think, as capital markets, we need to deliver products that can actually make us access.
I also want to talk to your viewers. Okay, right? All you young guys out there, right? If you want a new profession, if you want a profession that's gonna actually do a good life for you, right? Start getting trained up in money and capital markets. Why? Because we don't have the skills anymore. And I'll tell you now, if I can get guys who are trained up in money and capital markets, you'll give them a job. Because the problem now is that we've lost those skills. And in fact, in a way, for me, it's like going back to the old days when we were dealers and trading in banks and doing currency. We're back to that point. And I tell you now, it's a good profession. It works. Yeah, if you have the aptitude. So all you guys at universities doing all your education in accounting and so forth, hey, think about becoming a trader. Think about coming into capital markets. Why not? It's suddenly a career path which has got no skills. So what do we do?
Okay, so on that note of opportunity, I see the producers jumping up and down.
Oh, this guy jumps up and down, your producer. He needs to come and have drinks to calm down.
Yeah, he's a teetotaler.
He's a teetotaler, imagine.
Like my regulator here, so he's not going to, the source is not going to move him. So I just want to take this opportunity once again to thank you so much
for
putting this conference together, for coming onto our show, and you know, spending some time with our audience. I think we're all better off for this interaction.
Definitely.
We're all, I certainly.